Welcome to the only Danish podcast about pro wrestling. Today is probably an episode in English because we have the Middle East ace, the Sultan of Moonsault, the current Dubai Tag Team Champion, and Shaheen. Every wrestler has a story to tell. So are you ready to tell yours on this podcast?
Thank you so much for having me. Of course, I'd be more than delighted to share my story. And just to fix that introduction, a former tag team champion, unfortunately. But
Former.
let's
Oh,
see. Let's see what 2025 has to hold.
yeah. Hopefully a recapture of the tag team championship.
Maybe the world championship. That's what I got my eyes set on.
Okay. But I think we'll come back to that. So, Shaheen, it's nice from our listeners to know your background story and how you got into pro wrestling. So, could you take us all the way back to where it all started before pro wrestling?
All right. I would say before pro wrestling, I was trapped. I was trapped in what some people might call a cubicle, surrounded by the typical fluorescent lights and like the soul crushing monotony of a corporate life. So you can imagine being in that situation that days can blur into weeks and weeks into months, and you can easily feel like your life is fading away, right? As a creative person and as someone who drives inspiration from a lot of creative projects, from sports, from events, my creativity was very stifled. My passions were buried beneath mountains of paperwork. I felt like I was just a cog in the machine, just another face in the crowd. But deep down, I knew there had to be more to life. I needed an escape, and I needed something to ignite the fire within. So that's when I discovered wrestling. I decided to take up a travel opportunity to go ahead and see and watch, experience independent wrestling in London. And that's when I decided, you know what? That's for me.
Interesting. So, but one thing is watching pro wrestling and getting inspired, taking the first step of starting a promotion and the first step into pro wrestling is another thing.
Yes. So I never envisioned myself as a pro wrestler. It wasn't on my radar at the time, but something shifted inside of me. Just after watching these incredible athletes perform, I felt this primal urge, a desire, let's say, to step into the ring, to feel that adrenaline coursing through my veins. It was a calling that I didn't want to ignore, to say the
Ah.
least. That's when it comes down to wanting to become a pro wrestler. I took that brave step. I took that bold step, and then somehow, somewhere in this podcast, I will explain how that eventually led to forming and founding a promotion. Because if I wanted to elevate myself, that also meant that I had to elevate my ecosystem. It had to mean that I had to elevate the people surrounding me, people who have similar goals, people who want to do the same thing.
Hmm. Interesting. So doing that and taking those steps going because how well known is wrestling actually when you started all this up in Dubai? Did people know about pro wrestling?
Let me just say, there was an academy at the time, and the only audience was family and friends of those
Ah.
wrestlers. It would be 5, 10, 15 people at tops. So you could say that it was very, very young. The people who were on those academy shows were very driven, they were very passionate. It was just unfortunate at the time that there was no push. The people weren't that into wrestling. uh, there wasn't magic to be created, and for magic to happen there had to be a lot of work being put into it, a lot of discipline, a lot of let's say cooperation to make the sport known on this side of the world. Because if we're being honest, for example, WWE came down to Dubai in 2017, 16 as well. The stadiums were empty. From a business standpoint, it's not because WWE sucks, or it's not because no one wants to watch wrestling. It's because they just didn't market it enough. They were it was just a stopover on one of their tours. They didn't promote it well enough, so of course people wouldn't let's say be on those shows, or buy tickets. And that's another thing, tickets were bloody expensive.
Yeah, exactly.
that's
Exactly.
that that's where our promotion, when it came to WrestleFest DXB, it came to the complete opposite of that case study.
Yeah. Yeah, but one thing I find quite interesting, because you have this Middle East culture thing combining that with pro wrestling. How does those two things work together?
So when it comes to the culture itself, it's more about the talent being involved into creating the culture. Um, because I'm not sure if you know, on this side of the world, people expect you to become an engineer, a doctor, a lawyer, ambassador, some sort of expectation is there by family, by the education system, by everyone involved. It's just that we were lucky enough to be standing in the face of that, to create a wave of talent, a wave of people who want to do what they want to do, a wave of people who are passionate enough. And let me tell you, I have an issue with that word passion. It's obsessive. People who are
Ah,
obsessive enough to make it a reality.
but one thing is that you have the passion. Another thing is, as you talked about before, stepping out of the ecosystem of expectations from family and friends and really wanting this pro wrestling to succeed is another thing
Mhm.
that demands a lot of what can you say, passion again to do it, because people expect something from you and you do another thing. You're not going to be a lawyer, you're not going to be an engineer or anything. You're going to be a pro wrestler
Mhm.
and starting a
Mhm.
pro wrestling promotion.
Definitely.
Yeah.
That's where the first period of training really came in handy, and it really helped me, and it shaped me to become a better pro wrestler.
Hmm. But can you take us through, because you talked about the pro wrestling scene in Dubai was a little bit was very young and just starting up. How did you take those steps to start training? Because where did you find out to train and to start up and so
All
on?
right. I'd say from the moment I began, everything was done to try to learn how to become a better pro wrestler. Everything. So when I had that point of view, then literally the world became my ring, and it helped me become better at my craft. Let's
Yeah.
say, let me just put it this way: when you know what you want, the world is giving you the exact information 100%, because you know what you're looking for. So I initially started training at the end of 2019, early 2020, and since then my work ethic is every day for 5 years.
Yeah,
It's an everyday process.
yeah, I can see that because you're good at doing Instagram posts, stories, and so on. And that's why I think it's quite interesting, because one thing is that you want to be a pro wrestler, and another thing is living the life of a pro wrestler as you do.
Of course. So if like even if you don't follow sports, uh, like me, you probably know that Kobe Bryant was one of the goats of basketball.
Yeah.
If you look at his story, he didn't have one of the best verticals. He had big hands, but he didn't know how to palm the ball. He had height, but he didn't have a great amount of strength. So if you look at it, he had a lot of shortcomings. And in other words, he didn't have a lot of talent. But what he did have was what it takes to become a winner. So what Kobe decided to do was that he's going to spend more time in the gym, work on his weaknesses, and he took that passion and he made it into his obsession. You see, that's the thing that people have to understand about winners or about people who want to make things happen. The moment you're passionate about something, everybody wants to support you, everybody's got your back. Like, yeah, man, go follow your passion. I believe you can do it. You can do this. Because when someone is passionate about something, it's not threatening. It's not threatening. They still spend time with you. They're still somewhat the old version of themselves. But the moment you get obsessed about something, you are a very different animal.
Yeah. Actually,
You
one could say you are laser focused now.
Everything else in your life dies, and that's just a reality. That's the mindset I had to switch on the moment I walked into the academy here in Dubai. Is So just to give you a little of a backstory, there was a coach here, and unfortunately, he had to leave back to the United States. So he left the ring around here. So you could say that there was no direction. People had the ring, but they didn't know what to do with it. There was no training, there was no curriculum, there was no goals, it was just fun. But for me, I had to study the game. And don't get me wrong, I really enjoyed it. To be able to put myself emotionally in a place where I'm in practice or where I'm in training, I switch my mind into something else. I switch my mode into something else. For me, did you watch Gladiator, for example?
Yes.
It's the
Amazing
equivalent
movie.
of Maximus picking up the dirt, smelling the dirt. It's go time.
Yes.
So that's my mental switch, like an actor getting ready for a film. You've got to put yourself in that cage. And when you're in that cage, you're someone completely different. So don't talk to me, don't touch me. I'm in my zone. I want to get better. So that's what I did. The moment I felt like things were being average in training, I wanted to transcend. I wanted to be a 2.0 version of myself. So I wasn't going on holidays. I wasn't going on dinner. I wasn't doing things where I would be wasting my time or spending my money on useless things, but rather I'd be investing in tools that help me become that 2.0 version of myself. When it got average, I traveled. I went to different schools. I learned their craft. I brought that home with me, and I tried to teach that to my peers. And that's what it takes to really become a winner.
So the first that you are talking about going outside of Dubai. So could you elaborate or tell us a little bit about the places you went to,
So
so you could be
my
Shaheen
my first
2.0?
my first experience was traveling to the UK. I had gone to Will Ospreay's school, which is a London school of lucha libre, and that was the definite moment where I decided that I want to do this. I am not comfortable in that school, and I'm not what do you call it? I don't feel like myself. And that was the moment I knew that putting yourself in those scenarios are exactly what you need to do to not become average. And we all know that average is the enemy. And if you want to transcend to that higher version, you have to do things that you're uncomfortable with. So I went to London. Guess what? I didn't have a place to sleep, so I had to stay with a friend. Didn't have much on me. It was, I think, a few months before I started my first job, before I became a corporate slave. I got to dip my toes into the world of wrestling. So you can imagine coming back to the office, I really felt like there's something missing. I really need to do something about this. So back to the London point, I trained with one of my absolute top favorite coaches, Greg Burridge, who was Will Ospreay's coach. And his approach, everything that he's done was to challenge you, to make things fun, and to bring out a version of yourself that you didn't know you had. So, with his guidance and with his help, I was able to get videos and post that on social media, and just share my journey. And that actually came across one of the international promoters Instagram, and he decided to message me and hit me up and say, I want to book you for my show. So I look at my coach and I tell him, I'm only 1 month in, what is this guy talking about? And my coach looks at me and says, you've got to fucking do it, bruv. So sorry, it's like swearing aloud
Yeah,
over here.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
No
And he
problem, no problem.
he prepared me down to the dot to be able to perform and have my international debut on that stage where 4,000, 5,000 people were. And I'm just so grateful, so thankful to him to be able to give me that tool to become obsessed with what I had, with the tools that he gave me.
So the one thing that you're describing all this and your obsession, I think it's like you're possessed with a wrestling entity.
I mean, when you're in a corporate cage for 5 years and you're expected to conform and fit into a mold and to suppress your individuality, to get your ambitions buried, you obviously get to be on a crossroads where you either decide to be a corporate sheep in the herd, or you crave something more. If you want to be your authentic self, and if you want to be able to express yourself freely. So that's when wrestling became my rebellion. It was a chance to break free from those chains of conformity and embrace my true self, my true passion, my true hobby, my true talent. But I knew deep down in my heart that I didn't have what it takes. So that's where the Kobe Bryant came into play. I look at my weaknesses. I looked at things I couldn't do, things that I sucked at, things that I knew. Basically, if you look at Kobe, I told you he didn't have the best verticals. He couldn't palm the balls. So when you look at those shortcomings and you put a plan to upskill yourself, that's what it takes to actually become a better version of yourself.
Exactly. It's like when you want to be good at doing promos, you do a 5-minute promo every day in talking to the mirror in your
In
bathroom
the
or
car,
anything.
in the bathroom,
Yeah.
just looking crazy doing it, but you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah, exactly. So taking that experience from the Will Ospreay Wrestling School, where did you go from there in your training journey?
The pandemic.
Yeah, everyone.
So it was actually 2 months before lockdown period, and
Oh.
I I just knew. So every time I had this chapter in my life, I told you the first one was dipping my toes into training and then going back to corporate life, and then being able to balance that together with wrestling and training, and then I got to travel and perform overseas and come back and have bigger goals and bigger dreams and bigger ambitions. And then, boom, here comes the curveball. Stay at home. There's a virus outside.
Yes.
Don't go to training. You can't do shit outside. So I think what happened to me was a sense of, you know what? Let's look at this from a different perspective. How can we still do this? How can we still better ourselves? And I decided to do home workouts. I got a kettlebell at home and I did all these kettlebell workouts. I stayed fit. I did 200 burpees every day. I went out for runs. I still worked on my mental focus, my clarity. Once the gym started opening, I looked at the academy coach and I looked at him and said, let's bring back classes. If people over here are playing basketball and people over there are playing football, and then you've got people over there playing volleyball, how is wrestling any different? As long as people are vaccinated, if they want to do that. As long as they're fine with it, as long as they consent, where's the problem? Let's go ahead and do it. So we decided to bring back training with a few classes. I still was able to teach my let's say experience from London, and teach it to the boys, do private trainings, do seminars, do group classes. And then while we were doing those, you could see the volleyball pitches and the football pitches and uh, and the places surrounding us, because basically we were in a sports complex.
Yeah.
They had families and friends and crowds, like crowds of 20, 30 people in. And I looked at my partner and said, how is wrestling any different? We can do the same thing. Let's not conform. Let's not sit back. Let's do something about it. So that's what I like to think about the pandemic era. It was more of an incubation. We didn't take a step back. If anything, that was the beginning. You can go ahead and ask anyone on the Dubai roster and tell them, when was the Big Bang? When was the beginning? When was the actual time a transformation happened? And they would all tell you it's 2020, 2021, because there was this push. There was this level of being uncomfortable with where things are going. We were doing monthly academy shows. We were doing trainings. We were bringing in family and friends. And eventually the crowds went from 20 to 30 to 40 to 50 up to 100 people. And that's where we decided, you know what? The place is getting too small for us. Maybe it's time to start something. It's time to bring asses to seats. It's time to create that magic that I told you about.
Yeah, exactly. So going from there, taking those steps to really mold a promotion like where you are today. But that's one story. Your own story, starting your wrestling career, having your first real matches and so on. Could you take us all the way back to your first match ever and the story behind that?
So my first match ever was in that sports complex I told you about, and was with one of my buddies over here who was one of the consistent ones, and we had that sort of chemistry when it came to training. And the coach looked at us and said, you know what, maybe you can go ahead and have a good match. And obviously, knowing myself and being put in that scenario, and oh god, it's my debut and all that stuff. But then I remembered the thing I told you about. It's the dirt. You gotta pick up the dirt and smell it and put yourself in the zone and go out there and perform. So I went out there and I noticed that there's only 10 people in attendance. And I said, I either tank or perform.
Exactly.
I'm not gonna tank if there's only 10 people. This is an opportunity. There's videos, there's cameras, there's people here. Whether or not it was a paid show, even if it was free, I am still going out there and perform. I'm still going out there to become better at my craft. I want to show the coach that I have what it takes. Because if I'm giving you a bit of insight when it came to my debut match, I have the story of an underdog. I walked into the academy as a newbie. I walked into the promotion as a newbie. Everyone there had prior experience. People were playing around. They had their matches. They had their fair share of the stuff, and I was the underdog. And if there's one thing, Nikolai, that you and I know, is that on every show, people, they root for the underdog.
Always.
There's nothing. There's something about watching the little man. There's something about watching the small people, the people that they say are not that talented, and watching them succeed is the payoff in itself. So the next time people say forget the underdog, they have to forget that the underdog they have to remember that the underdog has more bite than that pit bull. So that's my story when it came to starting my journey as a pro wrestler. My first match, training overseas, coming back, bringing that with me, having that match with a friend of mine in front of 10 people, as I mentioned to you. it was a very humble beginning, and all I gotta say is humble beginnings are where they're at. They're the make or break moment. Whether you want to decide to become a pro wrestler, because let me be honest, if you've got a place like this where wrestling was so fresh and it was so small at the time, people who dip their toes and try that for the first time, trust me, they might not come back. Not because it's physically demanding, but it's not, as you mentioned, it's not what they envisioned themselves to be doing. It's not extravagant. It's not. There's no lights. There's no music. There's no superstardom. You're not getting paid hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? But you got to keep pushing. Everybody starts somewhere, and I'm sure, like everywhere you go, like for example, for me, when I've been going to random comedy clubs in the UK, I found out that they have their own independent circuits. You have people who are famous today, people who are doing open mics on Netflix, people who have their own comedy shows. They all started like that. They all started performing in random bars, random clubs with their backpacks, going to the manager, begging for 10 minutes open mic. And that's what it takes. You just got to start there and be there and understand that it's not pretty, understand that there's competition, understand that it's not as big as you might want it to be. But if you keep pushing, eventually you're gonna split the sea and make it work.
Exactly. And that I think that it's important for every wrestler to have this kind of knowledge and mindset, because whenever you start as a pro wrestler, you have to know that you have to do a great match, even though it's 5, 10, or 1,000 people. It doesn't matter. It's what you give back to the people, because maybe those 10 people there, as you said, are dipping the toes, and they like the temperature of the water that they're dipping their toes in, and they want to
Yes.
come back, and then they tell some of their friends, well, we were this great wrestling show, you have to come with us and watch
It's a
Shaheen the
domino
next
effect.
time. Yeah.
Exactly.
And it's important for every wrestler to be a little bit humble in the start, and then and know your roots and know where you're coming from, but then building up and going on that journey is so important to succeed
Don't
in
get me
wrestling.
wrong. Don't get me wrong. I'm still a student of the game. I still see
Yeah.
myself down here. I think that's actually what it takes, and that's what traveling taught me. No matter who the person was, or no matter who you perceive that person is on TV or on, let's say, the big circuits, you go to the academies and you still find them there. You still find them working on their craft. You still find them uh, challenging themselves to maintain that level that we mentioned.
Yeah, you still see a lot of the superstars from WWE going to the performance center, being there, knowing the craft, and do some training and pass on their knowledge. So I think
Mhm.
it's important. If you are at a point where you think you cannot learn anything more in pro wrestling or anywhere else in life, then what's the meaning of doing something if you think you're at the top of the mountain?
Yeah.
So taking that first match and moving forward, could you elaborate or tell us a little bit about your career?
So I'd say when it comes to the career itself, kickstarting it was very, very challenging. Just picture this: 9 to 12 hours a day. You're just buried under a mountain of emails and client calls and meetings and admin work, and you have the weight of responsibility pressing down, the responsibility to provide, to succeed. And you're juggling a million balls in the air, barely keeping them from crashing down. And after a long day, all you want to do is go home, collapse on the couch, maybe have a junk meal, but instead you have to force yourself to the gym. That was always my motto before I even started. Like, this is the beginning, Nikolai, of the career, because I was still working. I still had this job chasing me. But hey, discipline over desire, right? You have to know that pushing your physical limits just challenges your mental fortitude. Family, that's a distant memory. I was seeing them once or twice a week if I'm lucky.
Mm.
Uh, and this isn't me complaining. This is reality. It's messy, it's exhausting. It sometimes feels like you're drowning, but within this chaos, there's this fire burning, this burning desire to create, to achieve, to leave your mark. And you're not just working a 9 to 5 or a 9 to 6 jobs that would always go overtime, but rather you need to spare time on the side to pursue your passion and build your legacy. And on top of that, you have to hone your craft, you push your boundaries, you defy the odds. And that gave me a life of purpose. That made me embrace the grind, to embrace the struggle, because finishing that job at 6, 7 p.m. and then having to go gym, having to go train, having to go prepare my own meals, having to sleep, having to do that all over again the next day, it wasn't easy. It's not easy at all. But
No.
it is what it is. It just suck it up and do it. If you really want to do it, you just have to suck it up and do it.
Exactly. But Shaheen, could you tell us a little bit about molding your character? What character did you want to be in pro wrestling and the story behind finding your character?
So Shaheen actually translates to a falcon. It's a small falcon that is quick and very smart and maneuvers to the bigger prey. That's where I drew inspiration from that character. And I think through my work ethic and through my training and through my matches and training, the story has always been about defying the odds. Over here, I'm the hometown hero. I'm the person who's facing bigger guys or established international stars, people who are maybe bigger or stronger or more experienced, and people who have seen it all. As I told you, I'm walking into this as the underdog, and I still am to this day. So I'm facing people who have done it all, but I have something that they don't. Like the support of the fans. They always support the hometown hero, and I feed off that energy like no one else on that show. So I use it to fuel my fire. I use it in my arsenal and bring out the Shaheen in me that is there to prove that heart and determination can overcome big guy, small guy, established guy, non-established guy. That's what I'm there for. I am there to give the families and the kids and the trainees and my peers and my haters a dose of this is what I can do.
So you're giving the people of Dubai someone they can identify with.
Basically, when that is it in a nutshell. Because, for example, when it comes to media calls and when it comes to newspapers and all of that stuff on this side of the world, they're always looking for someone who can connect with the audience, someone who pushed through, someone who the audience may be able to connect with, and they're always hitting me up and Shaheen, we need an article. Shaheen, we need to an interview. Shaheen, we need this. And it's great. It's lovely because when you're so stuck into that bubble, you don't actually feel like you're doing something, because as I mentioned to you, you're in the zone, you're obsessed and you don't see it from the outside. So those moments are actually moments that make me realize and look at myself and say, you know what, maybe I am the person who is giving these fans someone they can relate to, someone who had that boring job, someone who has, let's say, pushes them to pursue their passion, whether it's wrestling or not.
Exactly. Exactly. And going from there, making that little small falcon. And how did you actually find your finisher?
Funny. So two things. First of all, I was looking at finishers that would stand out, given the roster that was there at the time. And I said, you know what? No one does a flip. No one does something as unique as this. So I want to be the guy who debuts and does something nice and something that stands out. So that was my thought process behind it. But the reason I actually wanted to do the moonsault is because in my first month of training, we had classes where we just lay down crash mats and then do jumps and safe moves on those crash mats. So I was a bit of a rascal, and I brought the mat before class. There was no coach, no trainee, no one there, and it was just me. So I decided to bring the mat, and I flipped and I over rotated
Oh,
way past the mat, and I stubbed my toe into the ring. And the moment I stood up, I tried to brush it off, and I took my first step and I felt something pop.
oh,
It was actually my tendon close to my toe. And every time I'd walk, it popped to the side and come back in. And I thought, this is not what's happening in my first month of training. I need to do something about it. So went to the hospital, got an x-ray. Turns out I actually broke my foot, got it into a cast. And I couldn't help but think, this is so dumb of me. I shouldn't have done that. But I'm going to go ahead and do it instead. I want this to be my finisher, whether or not I fucked it up or not. So there's the personal touch to it.
nice, a very nice story actually. But going through your career, you had a lot of different matches, as you were telling. You had a lot of this hometown hero. If could you take some of the key matches and the key storylines in your career until now?
Okay. So to put that, Shaheen, the underdog or the hometown hero who's facing these international stars, that was a storyline in itself, and I didn't realize that. But I only realized it when I got to connect with the fans on a deeper level, all the meet and greets after and before the shows. And that got me to realize and see that you got a lot of people spending their hard-earned money to watch you perform. So it's your job to be in shape. It's your job to perform at that level. And as a competitor, I'm not half-assing anything, whether I'm facing a local talent, whether I'm facing international talent. It's always 100%. So my favorite matches were the matches that made me feel uneasy. My favorite matches were the ones where I felt like it was a challenge. I'd say, to put like in no particular order, I'd say having that match with Mansoor was very special to me, because Mansoor is a very dear friend of mine, and I've known him way before that match. I've even known him while he was in the WWE, and we'd message each other and talk to each other. And whenever he'd come down to Saudi, I'm the first person there. I'm there to pick him up from the airport. I take him to his family's house. We play video games. Like he makes me his personal chaperone and puts tan all over his body. So when he's on TV and he looks super tanned, I'm like, yeah, I did that. That's my job. So that was the relationship that I had with Mansoor, and he was always there to push me and say, you live in the side of the world where wrestling is so niche. If you just gotta push, you gotta keep going. Just you do you. Go out there, have fun. Your time's gonna come. And as soon as he got the release from the WWE, he messaged me saying, hey, when's your next show? And I still didn't read the news. I didn't know he got released. So I'm wondering, like, what's he on about? And he said, I just got released, but it's a great sign. It's the beginning of a new chapter for myself and for Mace. So we wanted the first stopover or the first show for us to perform to be in Dubai. And I really think that we could square off and give these people a great story and a great match for people to talk about. And we
Nice.
had undeniable chemistry. Don't get me wrong, because we it's like we've trained with each other for years. If people watch that match,
Yeah. So
that
doing
was
that match must be something quite special. Like he said to you, I want to do the first match after my release with you with you.
I was so humbled and honored to be in that position, and you could feel it in the air. And let me share a very personal story. And so in April of this year, that's when the match happened. And at the time, there was a flood that happened in Dubai. And if you've seen the statistics, the amount of rain that fell over 2 days was equivalent to 70 years of rainfall. So the sewage system couldn't handle it. The drainage couldn't handle it. So everything got flooded, and we had to change our venue not once, not twice, but 3 times, including the dates. So you can imagine, I was so stressed and so nervous about what if the match doesn't happen? What if people don't show up? What if this? What if that? And then eventually we had to change the show to a Monday. We've never done Monday night shows. We always do Saturdays to rely
Yeah.
on people having the weekends and all of that stuff. So when it was on a Monday, I remember the weekend, like the Saturday and Sunday before, we were tasked with calling every single fan to let them know that we sent them an email saying that there's a venue change. And every single call was very, very positive, very understanding, and very relatable. We never got a Karen on the phone. We never got someone who complained. Everybody was like, heck yeah, we're going to be there. We're here to support. And that's the moment I knew that we do have a passionate community who genuinely loves this, who is going to go to the moon and back for our shows. So Monday comes, and it's our first Monday show. And I'm just there peeking through the curtains and just hoping that the chairs get filled up and people actually show up as they say they would. And you see people coming down in their suits, just coming back from work. And you see kids wearing their school uniforms. And you see people walking in late. And they eventually packed the space. And Mansour and I were main eventing that night. And the moment he came out and the moment I came out, there was this electric energy in the air of "this is awesome" chants right before the first lockup. And when that happens, when you have people like that in the palm of your hands, you're going to have a fucking banger of a match.
Oh, yeah. You're all the small hairs is like it's tickling all over your body, and yeah,
It's game time.
yeah. It's the zone time actually. So going from there, could you tell us a little bit about other matches besides that one, because it was a very heartwarm story actually.
Another one I would say is a match against United Empire's very own Francesco Akira. Being in that ring with someone the same size as me, someone with the same background as me, someone who didn't like being average. And this man had left Italy and the comfort of his home and taking care of his family to train in Japan. And we actually have a lot of parallels. So he went to Japan, and then that's when lockdown happened, and he was able to work on his craft during lockdown. And I had told him the same thing, and he looked at me and said, keep in mind that had you not done that, had you not worked on your fitness, had you not did the academy shows, had you not done trainings we probably wouldn't be in the same position we are today. That was my drive before our match. And let me tell you, he challenged the hell out of me. He was my size. We were doing similar moves. It was hard to maneuver around him. It was someone who had that extra touch to him, and they call him a fireball for a reason.
Are there other matches besides that? I know you've done a lot
So,
of interesting stuff. Just one more, then we should move on, I think.
okay, I would maybe say definitely against my coach, Fred Rosser at the New Japan Pro Wrestling Academy.
Yeah. Okay. How? Yeah, we could move on to the international connection, because how did that come about? You're going to the New Japan Pro Wrestling LA Dojo.
Um, I had previously mentioned the feeling of being average, or the feeling of wanting a challenge. At the time, I had my match with Francesco, Akira. I had maybe another one or two international showcases here in Dubai, but I really felt like after those matches, I needed something more. I want to transcend, I want to become better at my craft. And if things feel like they were a routine and they weren't evolving at home, then I needed to do something. So it was a very stressful time in my life, because we had the promotion running, I had the academy running, I had my day job, and then on top of that, it was busy season. And in my day job, I work in events, so we had a lot of projects. And when it comes to events, you're not you don't do one thing. You're a man of 10 hats. So this was the summer of 2023, and going into my boss's office and telling him that I got this amazing opportunity to be the only international in that New Japan dojo, and to be the only Arab, and to be the only Middle Easterner in that batch, was it was a bit, you know, of a step that I didn't know I wanted to take, because I felt safe. I knew my job was there to provide for my family, and quitting my job would be nonsense. And then I sat down and I reassessed, and I thought, when I retire from pro wrestling, not from this job, I never want to say that I wished I did more. And that was the moment I opened the door and I looked at my boss in the eye and told him, I have to be gone for 3 months, 4 tops, for this incredible opportunity to train at the best pro wrestling school. And I want to do this. And he just looks at me and says, go ahead, follow your dreams, go do it. And I thought to myself, there's something weird about this. So next thing you know, I'm 1 week into my travel to the States, and I get this email from the same person saying, you either come back now because there's a big project you need to work on, or you continue your play, your fights, your passion that you talk about. And I decided to send my resignation there and then, because I knew what I wanted to do at the time, and I was so hungry, and there was this fire burning inside me, that I knew no matter what decision I took, it's going to be okay. I know deep down that I can survive these 3-4 months in the States with no stable income. I have my people, I have my online coaching, I have different ways of earning, of making a living, and talking to my family about not being able to provide, because I want to pursue this. I really, really am obsessed with this sport that brings out a side of me that people don't recognize. That's when I knew that that was that's the international connection. That's the spark.
Mm. So how was it training at that New Japan Pro Wrestling dojo? How,
Okay, so when it comes to the training, let me just tell you that the every time you step into the ring, it's go time. There's no training, Nikolai. You step in
oh,
and you perform, and that's what makes the academy stand out. It's very challenging. It's probably the best decision that I've ever taken in my life. So the moment I stepped into the dojo is the moment I flipped the switch. And it doesn't matter. I'm sure you know, like, it doesn't matter if it's in business and life or sports. People get afraid of you when you flip the switch. And it's in the dojo, it's different when you have 15 people who have who turn that switch. So you
exactly.
cultivate, exactly, you cultivate that culture. You build something together. Everybody just brings out something in the other person. So we turned it together into a culture of passion. And don't get me wrong, it was definitely the best period of my life, and I want to go back. And I was surrounded by people who moved across the states, people who we had someone who was had a medical condition, and he changed his medical insurance to match California because he didn't have insurance in California to be able to work at the dojo. And then you had people who had other commitments in different training schools but still managed to juggle the both because that's what they wanted to do. So every single one of us who was at that dojo had something to fight for. And we're always there. We're constantly looking at ourselves and self assessing and challenging. And we've had amazing coaches like Fred Rosser and Kushida and Rocky Romero, and you'd get the occasional visits from big names like Chris Hero and Mercedes Monet and Leo Rush. And that's what I meant when I told you that no matter how big those names are, they still come down to train. They still come down to work on their craft. Hey, they might be having a big match in a month, and they start preparing a month in advance to get into that zone, to work on their weaknesses, to work on that pressure of wanting to perform. And that's really what made the dojo stand out.
Interesting, interesting. So how are you still in contact with some of the participants from that
On a
period?
daily basis. On a
Mm.
daily basis, because we're looking at each other grow. We have someone who got this incredible opportunity in Japan, and then we've got some of the women who were able to join the New Japan women's roster, and then we've had some trainees who were able to open for the New Japan shows in California. So they're on that side of the world looking at me, and I feel like maybe I'm stuck. And then luckily, because we have this group and we have this bond, they message me saying, we want to do what you do. We want to travel. We want to be able to perform in these places. So everybody has something. Everybody is doing something.
Exactly, exactly, and that's a very good bridge to talk to some of the other stuff that you have been doing, because you have traveled around the world in many, many different places. Could you take us through some of the more interesting and more maybe not so good experiences that you had around the world?
Uh, all right. So I've traveled to I'm at 17 right now, 17 countries. All right, spanning from Canada to Africa to the US to Europe to Asia. And I think the only place I haven't conquered yet was Antarctica, maybe. All of those experiences,
Well, that could
they
actually
are.
be interesting. A wrestling ring in Antarctica,
I
outside
would
in the
love
cold,
it. I would love it. I would.
created from ice.
Absolutely.
Maybe it's a little bit about the
We can start a
ropes.
GoFundMe. If you're listening to this, start a GoFundMe account and let's do a
Yes.
show in Antarctica. So, so when it comes to experiences overseas, I would say every one of them is pretty much the same, because before getting any booking, I'm looking at these promotions and I say, do they understand the business? Is it a promotion that I can help or that can help me in some form of fashion? What are the barriers of entry to that business? Is it a visa? Is it a flight? Is it accommodation? And then does the company itself or the promotion itself has a culture that, they believe in themselves and they are offering a good product, and have they turned their talent into this culture of obsessed people? So I look at those factors, and that's what inspires me to be in those places. So I really put myself in somewhat of a decision making process before I accept and before I take any bookings. And disclaimer for anyone thinking that I got those bookings just like that, it is behind every yes I get 100 no's. Okay, so that's the trick, guys. Don't give up. You'll get a no today, you'll get a no tomorrow, you'll get a no the day after, but eventually you'll get that yes. No matter how big the promotion is, no matter how small the promotion is, you will have to take that and then prove to the other promotion that it was a big mistake, and that they passed on you, and that you could be a good addition uh to their shows. So back to the experience of being overseas, Nikolai. There's something about this culture of, like, in Russia or in China or in Singapore. It's so beautiful when you go and you see these hungry people from training schools, from academies, trying to set up the ring and set up the spaces, and that's to me what stands out. It's not a well put together show bringing in people from different places, because that just feels like a show. But when it comes to a promotion, a school, an academy, setting it up on their own, and you've got these hungry people fighting for a chance, and you have people who are building this culture, people who want this so bad for their fans, for their talent, for their country, for their region, is something that drives me to this day. I bring it back home and I look at my guys and I say, you know what? We're changing stuff today. We're going to do this, because that's what I saw over there, and that's what we're going to do. So, like, these places, they really stood out to me. I liked my experience in China, I liked my experience in Singapore, I liked my experience in Russia, I liked my experience in all of the countries. To be frank, there's always that aspect of, you get to try new food, you get to meet different people, you go to hang out with the guys after the show, maybe do some karaoke, maybe, all that stuff. It's a fun bonding experiment. Everybody has to go out there and experience this. We're all in it together, and we're all there to make each other better, and we get to network with different names, no matter how big and how small, and you never know the contacts that you might make out of those, and you never know who might stop you backstage and say, hey, you're the Dubai guy. And I'm like, what do you mean I'm the Dubai guy? Like, so it's fun. It's really, it's a place where you get to put yourself out there, and it's a place where they get to put themselves out, and it's a place where we get to share, and we get to expose ourselves to different promotions, and it's a place where we get to exchange. Like, for example, I met Axel in Germany, in a show in Germany, and then that's what brought him here to Dubai, and vice versa. I actually trained at his pro wrestling school in Dresden, Germany, and that got me a booking on his show. And that's where it lies, Nikolai. The international experience, I like to break it to two parts: performances and trainings. Because if I go back to my roots, the time I told you about saving up money and not spending it on stupid shit, I travel. I travel to train. I travel to become better. So I've been to Florida to train. I've been to London to train. I've been to Germany to train. All these places, I just want to gather bits and pieces to be able to create not only a network but to transcend.
Interesting. But now we've talked a lot about your journey and so on. I think we should refocus on the Dubai wrestling scene today. What tell us everything that comes into mind that you want our listeners to know about the scene.
So, all right. When it comes to the scene, I think it's pretty clear that the audience themselves are pretty passionate. And there were several moments and several chapters in the Dubai wrestling scene where it started to evolve on a scary basis. It just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So just a quick backstory. We started wrestling in academy shows, which took place in sports complexes, near football pitches, near basketball pitches. Sometimes we'd have to book those pitches so that the place becomes a bit quiet and people can focus on the wrestling. So, yeah. so so we did that most of the time, and we invested in getting shabby fabric to act as curtains, and then we invested in getting a light or two, and we invested in getting a mat, and we invested in getting different tape for the ring, and we really took care of this as if it was our baby. So it grew from becoming this show with family and friends in attendance that can go up to 15-20 people tops, into having this complex house 50, 60, 70, 80 people. And then that's when the aha moment happened, and we decided to upscale and take it to a warehouse next door. And at the time, I was injured. I had a shoulder injury right before our first WrestleFest show, and I was so hungry into making it a possibility, making it happen, making it a reality. And I was putting in the goddamn work and rehab and everything, because I didn't know if I was going to be part of that show. So we booked the venue, we got the space, and we anticipated a certain number of people. And guess what? We got twice the amount of people show up.
Whoa.
And
Wasn't that very satisfying, actually?
It was, and it was also, it felt like a responsibility, because that one show, Nikolai, was supposed to be a one-off. Like, we were gonna keep doing these academy shows, and then we're gonna do one or two every month. And then when the people showed up, we realized, you know what, maybe we should do this every month. It felt different. It just feels right, performing in a venue with proper music, with a screen, with the smoke machine, with all of that stuff. We came in from humble beginnings, and now we got to do this. So it's time to take it seriously. So that brings me to the next chapter. Now that we got to dip our toes into that experience, things had to be serious. And that's where, when I traveled and I saw these people and I saw these academies that I mentioned to you overseas, they have a sense of seriousness when it comes to being booked on the shows, when it comes to being ready, because you have a lot of people spending their hard-earned money to watch you perform. So there's a lot of pressure. There is a lot of mental pressure expecting you to perform. And how do you overcome that pressure? You need to be able to challenge yourself in training. And that's the biggest lesson that I got with me from the dojo, is that I challenged myself there. I want my students here to challenge themselves. I want them to be able to do the best job that they could do. That's what I'm here for. It's for them to constantly look in the mirror and self-assess and challenge themselves. And if we have a drill that prepares them for a show, I don't want them to say I can do that. That's not what I want. I want things that make them say, I don't know if I can do that. I don't know how to do that.
Mm.
Those are the things I want. I want them to find that curiosity to help them reach a level that they didn't think was possible. So that is chapter 2. That is my chapter of running the academy to bring out the best in people, to bring out the best version of these talents to be able to perform on the stage. So that's the transformation that we've gone through. And then we slowly started making this a monthly thing. If we want to develop, we have to do shows, whether it's academy shows, whether it's training matches, whether it's live shows. So that's how it began. We've been drawing fans over and over and over, month after month. And we had amazing fans come up to us and help us grow the business. For example, we had someone who's a hardcore fan ended up being our photographer. Someone ended up being our announcer. Someone ended up being the podcast guy. Someone who ended up being the ring runner. And the best one of all was a fan who actually had the connections um, to give us that boost of a ticketing platform. That's how we got, for example, Virgin Megastore, which is a mega brand. Everybody
Mm.
knows Virgin. And
Yeah.
was the head of marketing, and he was a wrestling fan, and he showed up to one of our shows and said, I want to get you on my ticketing platform.
Yeah.
So one thing led to the other. As I mentioned to you, Nikolai, if you turn it to your obsession, things are going to come to you. And that is, to me, the biggest lesson that I learned to founding the promotion. Things, if you just make it your obsession, things will fall into place. People will come to you, businesses will come to you. You never know what you might be doing right that attracts the right people. So that is how it eventually grew. And then we started gaining the attention of different promotions, of established wrestlers, and people started following the accounts, and people started hearing about us, and they wanted to come in and help. They wanted to come in and perform, and they wanted to bring in their people and create this network and grow and grow and grow. So 5 years ago, we only had 6, 7 active wrestlers at best at the academy. Today, we have 30 people,
Oh.
if not more. And we keep attracting at a monthly basis. After every show, someone wants to come in and try it. And then we've got the Sports Council approval. We got, fun fact, when you applied for an event in Dubai 5 years ago, wrestling wasn't a category.
Oh.
Today, it is a category.
Oh.
So there's that, the accomplishments that help you feel like, you know what, we're in the business of making an impact. It's not just entertainment. It's not just uh, a performance. For me, it's more about that impact. And there's a really nice word that I like that you used and you picked up on, and it's the word ecosystem. And how do you build that ecosystem is that you have to constantly challenge the bits and pieces that go into it.
Mm. So now we have talked about the scene and so on. If we refocus back to you, if you could look into the future and say, where's Shaheen in 5 years?
Shaheen in 5 years will be on TV. Shaheen in 5 years will be doing more international shows. Shaheen in 5 years might not be here in Dubai. Shaheen might not be running the academy anymore. Shaheen is going to be the hero that I envision myself to be 5 years from now.
Mm.
That is who Shaheen's going to be.
So, what is your ultimate dream if you could pick a place saying, is it WWE, AEW, New Japan Pro Wrestling?
I'd
Or
say that's a very, very narrow way of looking into things. I am more about, like, if you give me a contract of any one of those, I'd be signing it. I'll be more than happy, because at the end of the day, my goal is to live a life of purpose and live a life of impact, whether it was in WWE, whether it was in AEW, whether it's in ROH, whether it's in New Japan. I might have chances in different promotions more than the rest. Maybe New Japan because of my connection there. Maybe WWE because they might be looking for the next Arab wrestler who's on their TV and attract a different demographic to Netflix, and that would be amazing. But at the end of the day, when I started traveling to all these countries, I started to realize that like the path is always uncertain and the destination is clear. If I want to make it to WWE and if I don't make it, that's gonna just kill me. I want to make it to WWE. I want to make it to New Japan. I want to make it to AEW. I want to make the goal is there, Nikolai. So preparation for me is always key. I started training 5 years ago with the hope that there might be a WWE tryout tomorrow. That is my mindset. So whatever I'm preparing for and whatever comes to me comes to me. I'm going to embrace it.
Interesting. So now we're not quite there with the finish, but now the mic is yours and the floor is yours. You can say whatever you want to say now.
All right. In what form?
It's all up to you.
All right. I just want to share a thing that's been bothering me for a while before I move on to like the advice maybe that you want to share with wrestlers. But just be careful who you confide in. Be careful who you train with. Be careful who is your travel buddy. When I trained in the dojo, my coach told me that you need that friend who you travel with. You need that friend who makes you better. You need someone who you can have bangers with to introduce yourselves to a new audience. And he always told me, like, you find the Samoa Joe to your CM Punk. You gotta find your indie buddy. And I took that to heart and I said, you know what? Maybe I've been doing this wrong the whole time. Maybe I've been doing solo for such a long time that I actually might need a travel buddy. I might need someone who travels with me, who brings out a side in me that I don't get to see when I perform overseas. So that friend, we shared trips. I took him under my wing for him to experience what it's like to get booked overseas, to reignite his passion in wrestling. And with all the travels, with all these trips, with becoming my travel buddy, I became inclined to tell him things, to confide him in things that I should have kept to myself. So little did I know that those things could eventually be used against me. And that man was Jay Lamrod.
Yeah, he's a snake actually. I saw that he stabbed you in the back.
It's not just about that, Nikolai. It's more personal. So when we traveled a lot, I got to tell him about my 2025 plans and what is next for Shaheen, Nikolai, is I got my US visa sorted. My work visa sorted. And I previously mentioned to you that I have peers in New Japan Dojo who got to open for New Japan shows and all that stuff. So I got that invite and I got the visa sorted. And somehow this year, hopefully I'm going to be able to travel and professionally work and be on TV. And this snake decided to go to the booker and tell him that I have a visa and I'm moving out and I'm pursuing different passions and I'm taking a different path. And to me, that was the part that was hurtful. It's not that attack or all of that shit that happened that you see that's over there on the stage. The plan was to take me out, figuratively. The plan was for him to feud with the champion. So you can imagine what it's like in the booker's head to think that you're leaving us, might as well just keep the next best thing, who's Jay, to feud with the champion. And that cost me the opportunity to not only become champion and have great matches with Jay and travel together with Jay, and for him to be that guy where I can have bangers with in Dubai and overseas. And he decided to take that information and use it against me for him to feud with the champ. So deep down, he knows that if that actually happened, he's always gonna be invisible next to me. And I think that is the root of the problem.
Yeah. He has something to think about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So be careful, guys, who you can invite in.
Yeah. And the other stuff that you said, you had some advice for maybe coming wrestlers or.
So as someone who coaches people in Dubai, I see there's three things that's always in common: pain, doubt, and fear. It's the underdog who's the person that turns that and those three aspects into their fuel. And you can look back at my scenarios when I told you about quitting my job. I had pain, I had doubt, I had fear. You can look that into my story when I first decided to have my international show. It was pain, doubt, and fear. And when I had my big moments with Francesco and Mansoor and traveling the world, it's always pain, doubt, and fear. So take that fear and make it into your bitch. There you go.
Thank you so much, Shaheen, for the time and your personal story and telling our listeners a little bit about the Dubai wrestling scene and what we can expect from the future to come. And
If I'm there on the shows anymore, because who knows what the
yeah, who
bookers think.
knows? Yeah. But hopefully time will heal all wounds. Hopefully. Time will tell. Time. Yeah. So, and I hope to talk to you again sometimes in the near future, and and have a little bit of more focus on the Dubai wrestling scene because it's growing. I think it's a new focus from around the world. A lot of people
Let's schedule it in for sure.
Yes.
I'm happy to do it. I'd like to talk more about the scene, more about the people, more about what it takes and the challenges and the triumphs of running this promotion together with a team, and the key aspects that make it what it is and make it the way you perceive it today.
Exactly. And thank you so much for your time. And we have this catchphrase always when we end an interview, is that everyone out there has to remember one thing, and that is that you have to watch wrestling live.
Always.